When examining gendered labor inequality, there are many tangible symptoms such as the wage gap, workplace discrimination, sex worker intimate labor, and unpaid care work. Symptoms that can be exacerbated by stressors such as poverty, mental illness, lack of access to healthcare, and lack of education. The symptoms and their stressors have proven difficult to mitigate on a large scale, but perhaps the response to a gendered problem may just be a gendered solution. I think that enacting a policy of universal childcare would have the greatest positive effect on quality of life for women in the United States. It could be an effective and direct solution, it could provide more autonomy for women, and its long-term effects could set the U.S. up for a better future. I think the field of anthropology and the practice of ethnography could be particularly helpful in reframing policymakers' understandings of the lives of those who they aim to improve. Not only would universal child care serve as a direct solution for the most vulnerable populations of women in the US, but it would be a solution created for members of a community by members of that community. In my search to gather data and apprehend how women and professionals in my community conceptualize labor, especially gendered labor, I attended an event at a college campus near me, as well as secured a meeting with a professor of economics. At the event, I interviewed longtime climate activist Susan and three members of STEPIC, as they call it, the Social Thought and Political Economy program, named Gina, Selena, and Sabrina. At a later date, I interviewed published academic author and professor of economics Nancy. In each of the interviews, I asked the respondents to share the most rewarding and demanding forms of labor for them, how they feel gender affects labor overall, and how they feel gender affects labor for them personally. They were also able to share a day in their life as whatever role in their community that they chose. Susan. When asked how she viewed labor in her society, she responded,
Capitalism depends on labor of women,
Yeah,
taking care of everything, right? I mean, that's still true.
yeah, true.
And even though women are working now, they're still doing all the unpaid labor,
Care
child
work,
care,
yeah,
and
everything.
cooking, cleaning, although, yeah, there hasn't been much change.
And on how it affected her personally,
Oh, I think I'm expected to contribute niceness labor.
as we discussed what a typical day in her life as a climate organizer was like, she joked,
It's never ending. It's like people talk about labor.
Yeah.
Like people are calling all day long about like
Gina. She shared her labor experiences, such as the abuse she faces while enforcing masking policies as a receptionist at a nursing home and working in retail, which she cites as her absolute least favorite type of labor. In contrast, she finds cooking for her friends to be her favorite type of labor, describing it as,
And it's a labor of love for me. I love taking care of my friends.
as someone committed to organizing, she later acknowledged the gendered labor that presents itself even in organizations who stand for egalitarianism, stating,
We even, saw that happening in several of the organizations that I have been in, and I really want to try to mitigate that. But even as a femme person, it's like I see a lot of patterns what's the word? Resurfacing of like I'm a femme person and I take on a lot of labor.
and additionally,
Sometimes it is demanding. I love what I do. I know it's for a good purpose, but sometimes people need to step up.
Selena and Sabrina. Gina's sentiments were echoed by Selena, noting,
it's like who's stepping up to take notes for these meetings?
and
See that this is happening and like this took a lot of work, but they don't really see that work because it's invisible labor, right? A lot of that gendered labor. I feel like that could not be so demanding if like you had support and like other people doing that with you.
again by Sabrina, stating,
In relationship, women tend to like take on the maintenance work of that relationship, the emotional labor work, and that can recreate itself in like an organizing space, or like you see that nobody else is doing it, so you're like, I know how important this is, so I'm gonna take this up, and like stuff like that.
Yeah.
When like in reality, we all should be like training ourselves to like do that emotional work.
Selena and Sabrina further examined labor by discussing the household they grew up in and how their mother being the primary breadwinner complicated the gender dynamics of labor in their home. Yet, this dynamic did little to mitigate the patriarchal expectations placed on them all, echoing Susan's assertion from earlier, with Sabrina noting,
Like, oh yeah, I'm supposed to do the cooking and cleaning. Like, I've been cooking and cleaning since I was like 5. Like, you know?
Lastly, Selena introspected on the internalization of gendered labor, stating,
So, like, despite you, like, trying to, I don't know, divest from that and stuff, it's, like, still, like, it's not even just that other person gendering you in these scripts. It's not even just, like, people around you gendering you in those scripts. It's, like, also, like, in your own brain. I don't want to be doing this, but yet I am, like, still doing it.
Nancy. Of gendered labor inequality, she said plainly,
I think women are expected to be more caring and expected to be less competitive and more supportive and more cooperative than men are. And that doesn't mean they are naturally that way. But I think it creates this really interesting paradox, which is that in a very competitive society, it's kind of disadvantageous not to be competitive.
and on how gender affects labor for her personally.
I think I'm kind of a funny mix of conventional and unconventional, and I don't really know why it shook out that way, you know. So I inhabit a very competitive and very androcentric world, but I kind of try to fight for more space for attention to gender and care.
When asked directly what she felt the most salient issue for women was regarding gender, followed by what she thinks a possible solution for it would be, policy or otherwise, her answer was unsurprisingly nuanced, stating,
Well, I think the real challenge for women and for feminists is to both affirm the value of care provision and reject the notion that women should do all of it. And it's sometimes hard to reconcile those two goals.
Throughout my interviews amongst diverse perspectives, women all echoed similar sentiments of finding themselves doing extremely valuable work that is, to put it simply, undervalued. From emotional labor to domestic labor, and even the labor of acknowledging labor, women recognize the need for change and increased support. I truly believe women have the opportunity to help ourselves by affirming the need for free and affordable childcare as a governmental policy. Universal childcare helps the most vulnerable populations. Giriama Society in Kenya continues to reaffirm the need for obscene funerary rituals because it is an outlet for the vulnerable members of their society to express themselves. Many would consider this a bottom-up solution that provides relief directly to those who need it, much like universal childcare would for women in the U.S. Enacting a policy of universalized childcare would give women increased autonomy across the board. With increased paid labor participation, women in the U.S., similar to the AGTA we studied, would have more authority or control over the economic gain of their own labor, as Tioko Griffin 166. Increased access to childcare for vulnerable populations of women could not only improve the well-being, growth, and development of children, but it could set them up for more success in the future. In conclusion, although universal childcare is hardly an end-all be-all solution to gendered labor inequality, I think its virtue lies in serving the most vulnerable populations of women by protecting them from stressors and providing them more autonomy. Access to affordable childcare would help mothers and children alike, creating a better future for us all. I really valued the challenge of this project and the opportunity to go out into the field for the first time. Interviewing professionals and peers was absolutely nerve-wracking and invigorating all at once. I was fearful of rejection or missteps, and although I was nowhere near I would like to be in terms of preparedness and professionalism, I'm trying to be forgiving with myself and appreciate the data I was able to collect and the connections I was able to make. This project has been difficult and a long time coming, but it was only further cemented my excitement in pursuing cultural anthropology and ethnography as a practice.